Okay, so welcome to the ER6 presenters. This evening we have David Schneer from Jakarta in Indonesia. And just first a little bit about him. He has a BA in English Literature, MA in TESOL. He came to Japan as a teacher at an English language school, but moved to a Japanese high school, which was specializing in foreign language classes. That school was designated a super English school by the Ministry of Education, but then he moved on to international school teaching in Singapore, Japan, and Indonesia. He's also published some commercial textbooks and written some academic papers, all TESOL related. And he is here to talk to us this evening about extensive reading in international school environment. So welcome, David, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here. I'll share my presentation, and I think the intent is just to keep this casual and light and fluffy. Please, by all means, if I'm not clear or if I forget something, feel free to interrupt. I don't mind that at all. We're just amongst friends. Okay, so this is the agenda for tonight. I wanted to talk a little bit about my background and some differences between extensive reading in Japan and international schools that I have noticed. Some programs I've helped create, including something in Japanese, successes and challenges, and then just to add some degree of seriousness and rigor, a bit of research at the end. So as Sandra had mentioned, I started off in Japan I came over as a language school teacher back in the day when eikaiwas were an important part of the Japanese economic sphere. And moved on to I think my last school in Japan was a high school in Shinjuku that specialized in languages, especially, and of course English language instruction was our biggest component. And that's where the majority of our students were interested in, and that was the first time that I came across extensive reading, and I walked into a program that was up and running and very successful. And that really influenced me throughout the rest of my career. And then after Japan, I moved to Singapore to international school, and I was at 2 schools in Singapore. My son was born there also, and then we started missing Japan. It's hard to leave Japan, much like a biker gang. So we moved back to Japan, this time to Yokohama, where I was at another international school and lasted there for about 4 years. But then we started missing Singapore. So we went back to Singapore, and it was a different international school. And then lastly, we wound up in Indonesia at an international school here. So, part of the philosophy of all of the EAL support that I've been doing in international schools is that reading is an essential source of language input. So reading is always a part of my EAL classes. And you'd think that goes without saying, that reading, of course, is an essential part of language learning, but I've discovered that it's not always included as much as it should be in EAL programs in international schools, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. My biggest influence, of course, is Paul Nation, who I also found out is not very well known outside of Japan. And every time I'm moving to an international school, I'm having to introduce people to Paul Nation. But I follow this line of thinking as much as possible when it comes to reading, and try to include intensive, extensive reading, and of course, reading fluency, which is involved in, which is a part of the extensive reading. This is from the 4 strands idea. So just so we're all clear, I was wondering if there were going to be any participants tonight, or any people that joined us that were not experienced with extensive reading. And I know that it has different, the definitions of what extensive reading is varies. So I'm just using this definition that extensive reading is long, interesting texts with only a few unfamiliar language features. So I'll start with some of the differences that I've noticed between extensive reading in Japan and international schools. And I might become a bit teary-eyed when I start speaking about this in Japan. I think extensive reading is widely incorporated into university English programs, but it's also in secondary schools and some elementary. And I know when I was in Japan, I would have probably debated that, but I'm thinking a bit more relatively now. And I think that for most trained teachers in TESOL, they will know what extensive reading is, whether they're implementing it or not, and they will have some sort of knowledge about extensive reading. I found that to be rather common in my own personal experience while I was in Japan. And I think in general, extensive reading, at least for trained teachers in TESOL, is just part of the discourse. It's something that we mention. We have the abbreviation ER, and I think it would be rare if you're talking to an old Japan hand or somebody with education in TESOL that they would question what that means. So it's something that is a little bit more common, more widely implemented and known. I was surprised a bit that this was not the case always in internet or in my own experience ever. But one of the differences I did notice was the incredible libraries that international schools have. All of the schools that I have been in had really wonderful libraries, places with lots of books, and as books have grown out of fashion, then other sources to read and even to listen to and to view. And that was compared to the library at my Japanese high school that was literally under lock and key. And if you wanted to visit it, you had to go to a special person down through a labyrinth, fight the dragon, and finally win the key that would unlock the door of the library. In international schools, wider independent reading is common, and I think this varies. I was at an Australian school for a while, and they refer to it as wide reading. So wider independent reading, which is a very similar idea to extensive reading, that students are expected to read, to check out books from the library, to read them for pleasure, in order to improve their literacy skills. So that is common in all the schools that have been at, which makes a very accessible bridge to extensive reading. However, the expression extensive reading, or the phrase extensive reading, that terminology is unfamiliar, and so is the territory about what it really is. For very good reason, I would suspect, which is that typically the population does not comprise many English language learners. However, that is changing, but when the majority of the population in international schools are highly proficient, near native speakers, then it would make sense that not many know what extensive reading is. It's not practiced even in EAL programs. And extensive reading is often confused with this idea of high-low books, which is high interest and low difficulty, or which is something that is a type of book that is given to students who don't necessarily like reading or struggling readers. English language learners are often given native level texts in EAL programs in the schools that I have been in, that I've noticed, and just talking also to other EAL teachers at conferences. And not too much thought is given to the complexity of the text that English language learners are given, or whether or not it would hold their interest. And as I mentioned, English language learners are often given text for struggling readers as well. So with all that in mind, when I first went to my first school in Singapore, we had no EAL classes, and which was interesting because half of the students were Singaporean, but the other half were coming from countries in Southeast Asia mostly, and China. And so they were just integrated into the rest of the school without special, any sort of language support classes. And so one of the first things that I did was help get graded readers into the library there using the ERF classification system. And I think the librarian was pretty receptive to that, very eager to learn what extensive reading was and what graded readers were. And it was easy, I think, in Singapore to get the graded readers. All the major publishers are there, and it was probably easier. Well, no, it wasn't easier than Japan, but it was easy to contact the publishers and get as many readers as I wanted. And typical of international schools, they had a big enough budget, and there wasn't any significant pushback. And one of the other cool things was, I was teaching Japanese ab initio, which is, for some reason, the International Baccalaureate is very pretentious and likes to use Latin terms, which is just basically beginner Japanese. And I realized very quickly that what we do in the world of English language teaching is very different from the world of teaching other languages, and extensive reading really was a bit finding readers in Japanese that were made for beginning level Japanese students of Japanese was quite difficult, but I did find them. And there's a series of books. This is 10 or 15 years ago, so I don't remember exactly what they were, but I was able to start extensive reading with my beginner Japanese class as well. Moved on to another school in Singapore. This one was had an array of EAL classes. There was language acquisition classes in both the middle school and the high school. And in addition, if students were not able to access the curriculum in their other classes, we had EAL support classes that would give them extra opportunities to develop their language skills. And that's where we would do a lot of and we had an intensive language program also. And I was able there to do the same thing, get graded readers into the library with the ERF classification. And I remember that the librarian was very eager to learn about that. We got the graded readers into the library, because this is always a question I've noticed in international schools. Where do you get, it's one thing to get the readers, the graded readers, but where do you put them? And a lot of librarians will urge you to put those readers in the EAL classrooms. I was more interested in getting them into the library so that the students, the English language learners, would not feel like they were doing anything separate or different from the other students, and that's that stigma there, to help lessen that stigma of being an English language learner, which is a thing in international schools, I've noticed. And I was also able to implement extensive reading as part of the MYP and the DP classes. These are the International Baccalaureate. Looking back, I don't know how I did this at DP level, which is grade 11 and 12, because those classes are so full on. But I remember at that time, the students were able to go above and beyond and do extensive reading at home and talk about the books in class. And we had reading records too, just for some sort of accountability. Moving back to Japan, I walked into the EAL classroom and I found it was filled with graded readers, sorry, but they were behind, they were in a cabinet behind doors, and it didn't look like anybody had accessed those in quite a while, especially not the students. The librarian certainly wasn't aware that they were there, but I think we had like all of the Penguin books. And so I was able to move those. No, I wasn't able to move those into the library for a while until my last year. Those were kept in the EAL classroom. Eventually, we did get them into the library with a classification system, the ERF classification system. and I was able to implement ER as part of the MYP. MYP classes are from grades 6 until 10. So it's easier. You have a little bit more leeway, a little bit more freedom and room in the MYP classes. Once you get to grades 11 and 12, the curriculum is more determined, prescribed, and set, and there's not a lot of room for anything outside of it. But we were able to do it in grades 6 through 10. And again, with the reading records. Singapore, school number 3, was able to do it in MYP and DP classes and the EAL support classes, the graded readers, again with the classification, reading records. And this time, because I was head of department, we could make extensive reading a department-wide thing so that all the teachers were doing extensive reading, which required a bit of training with the teachers who were nobody was really familiar with what extensive reading was, so had to bring everybody up to speed and give some reading. Yeah, Paul, go ahead.
I'm sorry if you said earlier, what is a MYP, and you also used an earlier
DP.
a DP,
Yeah.
and an earlier one, which I think was English, something alternative languages. I'm not sure where. Maybe if you said, I apologize. I just didn't know what they are. Maybe everybody else does.
Sorry, most international schools follow the International Baccalaureate, and that's the IB. And within the IB, there's 3 programs: the elementary school primary years program, which is the PYP; the middle school, which is the middle years program, that's grades 6 through 10; and the DP, which is the diploma program, grades 11 and 12. And the IB does have language acquisition classes. English language acquisition classes, which is a big difference from the American school system's curricula, which does not include language acquisition classes.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, sorry about that. And also, some international schools will include an EAL support class in addition to the language acquisition classes. And that's what they're called. They're called English language acquisition, or if you're doing Spanish, Spanish language acquisition, French language acquisition, Bahasa, Indonesia language acquisition, etc. So now I'm in Indonesia, and I'm starting all over again because I've only been here since July, which is how I got to know X-Reading and Paul. We don't have language acquisition classes. All of the students are integrated into the English language, the regular English language classes, which is what we've all taken when we were in secondary school. But there's also an EAL support class. So I would say my students now are probably Common European CEFR level A2, B1, probably in the middle there. But they're in native level English language classes. And so our unit this quarter is poetry. And my kids, are still not at the 3,000 word level, but that's the way it works in the American system. But I do have an EAL support class. Now, the problem in Indonesia has been getting graded readers because the publishers aren't here, and it's very hard to get actual physical books. So X-Reading kind of saved our life. So we've been using X-Reading, and I started in grade 6. And these are the little ones. These are great. These are just 11-year-olds. And then the rest of the department had recently adopted X-Reading and have become interested in extensive reading. And so now it's a middle school wide program. Everybody's using X-Reading. Previously, they were all using, all of the students, when they were doing their independent reading or their wide reading, they were checking out books from the library. So if we think about work in vocabulary acquisition and nations work, research, and if you need, 9,000 words to be able to access a book, a typical book that's without being assisted with a dictionary or translator, my kids were nowhere near that for the most part. So we have Yale department buy-in, which is really, really nice. Let me stop there just because I've been talking a lot. Any questions or ponderings or wonderings or donations at this point?
Just to say that please feel free to talk as much as you'd like. There's no limits. So yeah, we're very interested. So yes.
Could you please relay that same message to my wife and colleagues?
It's very interesting so far. It really is a different world.
Yeah, yeah. So let me talk about some of the successes and challenges. Starting with the successes, building libraries has been fairly easy. You know, I've been so fortunate to work with librarians who are, you know, they're trained librarians. They've done library science, I guess, as part of their degrees. They love reading. They love it when students read. So as soon as I say, hey, you know, the English language learners have they don't have books that they can access, you know, the facial expression changes. That's terrible. What are we going to do about that? Well, don't worry, I'll get you set up. And building the libraries has been quite successful because I've had a lot of support with that. There's buy-in typically from the librarians, and there's been buy-in from other EAL teachers. There's not really been one EAL teacher that I've worked with in any of the 5 schools that I've been in that knew what extensive reading was. And you know, some teachers are a bit more challenging than others, but I think I think it's Rob Warren's article that introduces people to extensive reading that I pass on. And I think between, you know, my proselytizing in that article, people buy into it fairly quickly. It's really I'll talk about this a little bit later with some of the research that I have, but it's really the extensive reading really has aided student reading development. And that's been so nice to see. Also with student confidence, you know, it's you know, I've come into situations with English language learners, and they've been struggling through these books like young adult fiction, and they see all the other students reading these young adult fiction books, and you know, the English teachers go on and on about how wonderful these books are and these different books, and then the EAL students get them, you know, try to read them and are not as having much fun or enjoyment, or not even understanding what they're reading. And you know, that's a detriment to their confidence. And then they get into some of these graded readers, they find out that they can read them, they find out that they do enjoy them, and it just does wonders for their confidence. And that's such a beautiful thing to see. One of the challenges has also been building libraries, because it depends on the school, but not all librarians have been as receptive as others. And as I mentioned, you know, I've often had to start by keeping the graded readers in my classroom, and then gradually transitioning them to the libraries. But especially in Indonesia, you know, I in my school now, I went to the librarian and said, here's what I'd like to do. She says, beautiful. Just tell me, how do I get these readers for you? And I said, okay, well, you know, we have, you know, Oxford and Cambridge and Penguin and Macmillan and Hindley, and here's the web pages and here's the readers, and just go wild. And she said, okay, great. Don't touch it, Schneer. I'll do it. This is so fun. And then we find out, you know, 3 weeks later that if we want the physical books, it's going to take months to get them in here. And that was a really big challenge here in Indonesia. Like I said, most of the librarians have been wonderful, but when I was back in Japan, I heard something that I had never heard before. And I said, you know, I was explaining what extensive reading was to the librarian, and there was pushback, there was significant pushback, and the argument was that students should not be categorized by their level or pigeonholed by a level. They should be able to read whatever they want to read and have the freedom to read what they want to read. And they should not be assigned a level, because that is detrimental, you know, to their creativity and to their freedom and whatever. And I at the time, I didn't really understand where that was coming from, because I have been coming from a position where the EAL students really felt stigmatized and did not want to stand out as English language learners. And in order to deal with that, they would check out books that were way too difficult for them, just to present to the rest of the student body that they were not English language learners. And they wanted to check out books that they couldn't access, they couldn't comprehend necessarily, just to fit in. You know, they're mostly teenagers, right? And so I'm fighting against that. And then I have a librarian tell me that students shouldn't be leveled. And it was hard to convey that, yeah, actually they can be leveled. They should be leveled, and they should not be reading things that is not really, that they don't comprehend. For the most part, they should not be reading things that they don't comprehend, because it's not doing much for their literacy or their English language acquisition. So we reached a compromise where I would strongly encourage the students to stay with the graded readers. But if they wanted to read something that they couldn't comprehend, they could do that too, but to stick with the graded readers. And so what I was mentioning, there's been some student resistance. You know, students don't always like the extensive reading because it makes them stand out. And I think, in all fairness too, there's not as much variety in the graded readers, especially when the kids, you know, when my English as an additional language students are surrounded by students who are reading the latest publications, and exciting books, and they feel often that they may be stuck with a limited selection of material. We're busy. There's, you know, the curriculum is rigorous often, and we don't have as much time as we'd like to read in school or at school. My current school is very different, but that's been my experience. So getting the students to read at home has been a bit of a challenge, and getting parental support for that has been a bit of a challenge as well. Resource availability, what I just mentioned here, you know, it's hard to get physical books. We have to go through the American Embassy, I think, for our supplies once a year. And because we don't have access, Amazon doesn't really exist here, for example, and we don't have access. So we have to bring in big shipments through the US Embassy. I mentioned text variety, the librarians I did mention. And all the love that is holy and pure, Harry Potter has ruined it. Like, every kid wants to read Harry Potter, and I don't know why the Harry Potter series has not yet been made into graded readers. But, you know, this is what all of the tutors for my Korean students, especially the Korean students, have a lot of after-school support, and their tutors are all giving them Harry Potter to read. And as you know, from Japan, all the Japanese students want to read Harry Potter. And man, the language in Harry Potter is so difficult. And I curse Harry Potter for bringing this into the EAL world. Okay, before I get into the nitty-gritty of some of the research that I've done with this, are there any questions that people might have?
I like what you said about Harry Potter. I think someone once commented it's the most purchased and least read book among Japanese. Yeah. So when I arrived in Japan, that was, you know, quite new. I think the movie had just, you know, come out, and yeah, everybody wanted to read it, and yeah, it was just, you'd see so many disappointed students.
Yeah. Chris is asking what Lexile level the Harry Potter book. I don't know. I still don't understand what Lexile levels really are, or how. I'm serious. I'm not being sarcastic. I don't really understand what they are or how they are arrived at. I think that there is a connection to the MAP tests in the United States. The other teachers often mention Lexile level to me, and I really don't know. I don't know what the levels are, and I don't speak Lexile. I tend more to use the corpus linguistics and the first, like the British National Corpora or the Contemporary American English Corpora, etc. So I'm not sure what Lexile levels they are. Probably grad school level.
Also to answer your question, I think what's her name, J.K. Rowling's, she's the one who said she didn't want her book simplified. I think I read that somewhere, that she felt it would, betray the language she used. I don't, yeah. And she was an English teacher in Spain, so I think she knows, it's not like she didn't quite understand the kind of students reading limitations they have.
Well, damn you, J.K. Rowling. So I used the ERF placement test. I forgot who that was developed by. Some online. There's a link on the Extensive Reading Foundation website that it places students. And so, sorry, Chris, I can't read that. Oh, okay. So Chris is just posting in the chat the Lexile level. Okay. All right, cool. Thanks for that. So I give the students this placement test to place them in the beginning of the year. And then, so this year I gave it to them in October, I think, or no, maybe November. And then I gave it again to place them, or to see if their levels had gone up in January, in the second semester, in the first week of the second semester. And these are the results that I have. So these the light blue bars are their first test that they had, and the numbers are their levels. And for the most part, between November and January, after having the students on a fairly consistent, somewhat rigorous, extensive reading schedule, you can see that a lot of the students did improve in their level. So right now, I am primarily using X reading, and for their graded reading, and the students are reading 20 to 30 minutes a day. We are doing a lot of in-class. When they come into my EAL support, they're doing regular reading on X reading, their graded readers, and because of that, because of that amount of reading, I think that's one of the primary reasons their reading levels have improved. So this is what the improvement looks like for each student. So these are the amount of levels that they have increased. And there are 6 students whose levels dropped. But for the most, I'll talk about that in just a minute. But for the most part, you can see that they have increased. I have not run any t-tests on these results. This is just an in-class. This is not something I'm going to publish. It's just sort of a for me to gauge how the students are doing. I don't know if it's statistically significant or not. Just as a classroom teacher, though, when I step back from this and see that the majority of the students have increased their level, it leads me to believe at this point, without doing any sort of rigorous statistical analysis, that the students they're making gains. Yes, these are gains in their extensive reading foundation levels. Yeah. Now you'll also notice that there are 6 students who dropped. 3 of these students are learning support students, and I think specifically they have issues with attention, and I think that could account for some of it. For the other 3, I'm not really sure, and it's it's something that I wanted to mention, and I'm certainly open to ideas. I really don't understand when the students are surrounded by English and they're reading English in their other classes. And when I've got them doing timed reading regularly and they're reading graded readers in the EAL support class as well as at home, I don't know how, I don't understand how their levels would drop. So that could speak to test validity. It could just speak to the kid not having breakfast that day. I don't really understand what's happening there. And I've seen this happen with other reading metrics. Sometimes students' reading scores drop, and I just it's baffling to me because logically it doesn't make sense that a student's reading would become worse. Okay, so what were the amounts of reading at home from the students? Let me show you what I've got here. So here's a little bit more information. And this is pulled from X-Reading. And God, Paul, this is really cool that X-Reading tracks all this. So you can see the amount of students, the amount of hours read with the kids and the amount of words. There's green with the amount of hours. Anything in green is 10 or more hours. And this is over 3 months. And in the words read, green is 100,000 words or more. So, like if you look at student number 1, he's read for 13 hours, almost 14 hours, and dropped 2.7 levels, right? From 7.4 to 14.7. So I'm not really sure what's going on here. Yeah, thanks, Kimberly. I'm gonna do this again at the end of the year. But it's really interesting. Like, I just can't find any correlations that stand out to me easily. Some of these kids that have been reading, there are some kids that haven't read much and that increased significantly with their levels, and other kids that read more and did not increase. So I'm not sure what it is. Could be, yeah. I guess the other thing I have to remember is that the ERF is not meant to be used really in this way. Chris, I'll get to your question in a minute. Sorry. Chris, are students choosing to read easier books now than at the start? I don't know. Typically students are reading in their level. They will be told they'll get their level, and most of the students won't read below that level. And I think it's more of a pride thing. It doesn't matter how often I tell them that it's good to read at levels below your assigned level or the level that you tested at, but most of them will be reading at their level or a little bit above their level. Sorry, Paul, what was your question?
You answered it. Second after was just I'm not sure the placement test is meant to be a progress test. So that could be, I think you said the same thing. You might not be using the test in the way it's supposed to be used.
Yeah.
If you're finding students are choosing books that are too high level, why don't you just tell them that their level is lower than it really is? Or would that be dishonest?
Say that again.
So you said you were encouraging students to choose easier books than their ability.
At some points, I don't want them to only read at their level, but sometimes, especially when they have a lot of work or there's a lot of assessments in a week, I'm encouraging them to read below their level just to get floods of input.
Got it.
Kimberly suggested I design my own test. Nope. I did a second language acquisition or second language test course. And the problem with me is if I'm going to design a test, I'm going to do it right. And that means it's going to take me about a year to go through that whole process. That's what really should be done, though. It's hard to find tests that
Call this one a pilot study and then design your own test in the background and implement that next year.
Yeah, it's certainly worth considering. Certainly worth considering. Some other research at my last school, just to give you a bit of context. This was the school we had the middle years program, grades 6 through 10, and the DP program, grades 11 and 12 classes. So those are language acquisition classes, and the students had extra support in an EAL support class. We had graded readers with the ERF classification and their reading records, and EAL was department-wide. So lots of English language support. So in the EAL support class, we were doing extensive reading and timed reading. And for the timed reading, we were using the Paul Nation books for timed reading, and also something published by Jamestown, which were those timed reading books were designed for native speakers, and there were some students who were at that level. And so it gave the kids a survey asking them about the different components of the EAL support program. And so for the reading portion, I asked the students, this is their own perception. Did you perceive that your reading improved this year? Sorry, not this year. Do you think that your reading improved this semester? We did a survey at the first semester, at the end of the first semester, and then again at the end of the year. And it was on a Likert scale. Strongly disagree was a 1, and strongly agree was a 5. And the average response from students, and this is grades 9 and 10, was a 4 out of 5. They felt that their reading improved. And so the next question was to please explain why you chose the number that you did. And these really don't, in my opinion, don't count as explanations, but for English language learners, I thought it was interesting. So why do you think that why did you choose a 4? So you can see that 11 to 8% said no. I don't think there was much improvement. But 9.2% said that their overall their English improved. That doesn't explain necessarily why they thought their reading improved, but whatever. They said that overall the reading helped them improve their overall English. 20% said that their assessment scores got better. This is their assessments, their tests and other classes, and that's why they chose the number that they did. A small amount said that their motivation towards reading improved. And then a large number said that their reading skills improved. So, we're getting into a bit of circular logic. Why do you think that your reading improved? Because my reading improved. But, this is what they said. They said they chose the number they did because they felt that their reading skills improved. And then 13% their other English skills improved. So that was an interesting connection. Some of the students said I chose the number I did because my listening improved, or my speaking improved, or I understand my teachers more, which I wasn't expecting. But the students' perception about the improvement in their reading through doing regular work with extensive reading and timed reading was pretty positive. Only student perception. Okay. And counting vocabularies. Okay. Paul Nation, I worship at his feet. Cited him a couple times. And that's all I have, y'all.
Thank you very, very much. Everybody, a round of applause. from everybody here.
Yeah, yeah. And well, can I talk a little bit?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Thank you. I also work. Used at high school and university students, and we used the test for progress test for EPER. EPER. Have you heard of EPER?
No.
Edinburgh Project on Extensive Reading.
Oh, yes, 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 yes. God, it's been years.
I
Yeah.
use that one, and also that we don't use the Excel, but YL. YL means for Japanese students, just for Japanese. Yeah,
Okay.
YL. And one of my friends and I researched why some students did not improve.
Oh, okay.
Yes. It was a very, very, very difficult because we had to check every record. Well, they keep their reading records in the book, and we checked all of them for all the students, for the improved students and for didn't improve or lost students, and it was very, very interesting.
Okay.
And well, the students who started from the easy books and gradually went up, they all of them have improved. But some students who read a big one and difficult and easy and difficult and easy and no, well, he just took it and read it, and I don't know how they understood. And also that the most different part that we did was it took us a long time that we just read the comment. And then if it was a good one or if it was easy or the picture was fun, those comments were very simple and those didn't improve. And some students who used for, oh, I didn't know this word, or I have learned a new word or something like that. So those who commented on the language also, not only the story, but the language, they all improved. So the way they read for a year or two, so that is very important how they read, I think, to improve the students. And some students who didn't improve said, oh, it's easy to read this book. Or I don't mind if I don't know the words. And some students try to understand the words, the difficult vocabulary. But some students who didn't care, those students didn't improve.
So it sounds like you're making connections to attitudes towards reading.
Yes, that's one. And the way the books that they choose. Yeah.
The
What kind
easy
of
books.
Pardon me?
Those who started with the easiest books made the most improvement, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then it's very easy. Well, I think that it's very important for with the students to read the same level books for several plural books, for example, Oxford Bookworm, because each publishers have they have words for certain I forgot the name.
Yeah, they use their own corpus. Yeah.
Head words or word list.
Yes. So it's very helpful for the students to read the same level, same series for 5 or 10 books. I'll tell my students so that they can learn more vocabulary again and again. The same vocabulary they meet, so they learn vocabulary and there's so many things that students can make it read better.
Yeah, that's really good advice. The challenge that I have with the little ones is they don't exercise as much metacognition or motivation so much in their language learning. They just want to have fun and understand it, and I that doesn't stop me from trying to talk to them about the importance of, for example, I could talk to them about the importance of reading the same publisher because they will encounter the same amount of words, but mostly they just want to enjoy themselves.
Mhm. As long as they enjoy it, fully enjoy it, it's okay. If they don't understand, I don't think they can enjoy them.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And
Atsuko,
also for the librarian at high school was very, very good because she did, well, she didn't like English. That's why she became a librarian in Japanese as high school. But the students, she looked at the books that the students were reading, and she thought, this is probably I can read them. And she started reading it, and she read about 1 million words. And she started as listening also. And then she found out that it's very, very good way to learn English. So she told any students who come to the library, why don't you read these little picture books and things? She is more helpful than other English teachers.
Yeah, yeah, that's often the case with librarians, I found too.
Yeah, yes. Yeah. So I was very happy that she helped me because I was the only one who was doing extensive reading. That many English teachers were opposed to that because why do you why do the students read such easy books? High
Yeah.
school students, they say that's silly.
Yep.
Some students said you
Yeah.
won't get into university if you are reading those easy books. But
Yes.
after a year of reading, the school that with extensive reading became the highest level. Yeah, yes.
Yeah, that's
So
with the research that I've read too. Paul,
so,
did you
but
have
it
a
is,
question?
yes.
I have
Most
actually a question for Atsuko.
sorry. Yes.
Atsuko, because I used to use the EPR test a lot. I haven't in many, many years. But there's two parts, right? There's like the closed part, and then there's the actual mini graded readers. I was curious, do you use both or do you use just one of them?
Just the easy one
But
at the
the
beginning.
graded reader type, not the closed activities.
No, just open, not close.
Okay, so they're reading like a simple graded reader. Is that the kind of test they're doing?
Pardon me?
So when you give your students the EPR test, what does the test look like?
It's just the students have to fill out the parentheses.
Oh, so we call that a closed test. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, yes, closed test. Yes,
Okay.
closed test.
Okay,
Yes.
so I always use the other one. I had them, if you recall, there's I think 8 different levels of mini. Is anybody else familiar with the EPR tests? Because they are fantastic. I think Chris, you said you've used them.
There are
You've used them.
several, difficult one and easy ones in closed test. So first I use the easiest closed test, and pre and middle and mid and what the last one, and for the after extensive reading for 1 year, I give them 2 easy one and the middle one, easiest, and
Okay.
then yeah. So
I think I understand. Yeah, if anybody's not familiar, they're great. David Hill in Edinburgh
yes.
created 6 mini graded readers, 6 or 7 mini graded readers, and then so the student would feel like they're reading an entire story and then had to answer questions afterwards. And the 6 were at different levels. And then there was also
The reading one. Yeah. Well, I sometimes use that. I went to see Dr. Hill. Yeah, as
in
far as
Edinburgh.
yes, because I wanted to read this one. I wanted to use EPA test. So I went to
When did you see him? How many years ago?
2003 or so.
Okay.
Well, from Washington, there was a conference in Washington. So after the conference in Washington, I flew to the UK
Got it.
to see
Okay, so
him.
that was before the first World Congress. He was the keynote at the first World Congress. In
Yeah.
Kyoto.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think he's retired a few years after that.
Yes, but it works for me, for my students, the EPAR test. Yes.
Yeah, I thought it was great.
Because, you know, Japanese students are not used to using these, filling the parentheses. They always call a multiple choice or something like that. So it was very difficult. They students think it's difficult to do that, even the university students. But still, they have to know the grammar, or they have to understand the story and everything. So I think it was a very good test.
Yeah, just finish up on the EPR. I believe when he retired, he donated the whole collection to the something, he gave it to the Extensive Reading Foundation. They now have control over it. I'm not exactly sure how it works. I know for many years he used to sell it in the kind of the pre-internet days when you could sell stuff like that and not have it pirated everywhere. But I think eventually when he retired, he just decided to give it to them, but I don't know how they deliver it.
Yeah, well, some teachers want to use it, and I have one, so I let them use it. Yeah. I think it's a very useful way to find out their improvement.
That's very interesting. Paul, yeah, what do you have something to add?
Oh yeah,
Paul,
just for David. Thank you, David. That was very informative. Particularly because I have two young daughters who just entered the IB program here in Japan. And the one thing that really struck me is, yeah, just what you said. There's so much reading support in those schools, and the libraries are just amazing. These huge places, and the librarians are just so well informed and so proactive. And yeah, I was just blown away, and how much energy they were putting into reading. But yeah, you talked about this sort of stigma being attached to the students who needed extra language support. And in my daughter's class, there are a number of students who have to have this extra support. And I felt there was sort of almost a dichotomy starting to emerge in her grade, where there were the students with the language support and the students who didn't need the language support. And I think the fact that they've also brought in greater readers to the school my girls are at, and they've got them all there in the library with the other books as well. And I think it's a great thing that, you know, lower level or comparatively low level ability students can go in there and just, like, you know, check out a graded reader, check out a few, you know, leveled readers, and check out some higher level books, and without sort of having to, you know, sort of say, okay, I need this support. So yeah, it's great. But yeah, just those IB programs are amazing, aren't they?
Yeah. They're they can. I have a lot of time for the middle years program. I have mixed feelings about the getting into grade 11 and 12. It can cause a lot of stress. I always ask when the students come back to see me, and after they've entered university, I always ask them the same question, which is more difficult, your university classes now or your grade 11 and 12 DP program? And
They would say DP.
Yep, invariably. And
well, you know that quite a few of them go into year 2 of university as well, don't they?
Yeah.
So yeah. I'm kind of jealous of your context in that respect.
David, when you said your first time teaching English at all, that was in Japan? I know when you went through your history, I was wondering, did I get that correct?
Yes. Straight out of 3 months after graduating university, I came to Japan with Eon.
Okay, when they used to recruit teachers in the States.
Yeah.
What year was that?
Oh God, 1995.
Okay, so similar. Got it.
Yeah, long time ago.
How did you get ER into the DP program? I just can't even begin to imagine how that happened. The workload is just so intense. They barely have enough time to do what they have to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So that was when I was that was my second international school in Singapore, and we had just started the English language acquisition class in grade 11. I was the I was the first teacher to teach that, and I had 4 students. They were all Chinese, and we had a small class and very eager students. And, you know, they were very passionate. So, you know, I approached it, hey guys, this is something that's going to improve your English. I don't know if you have time for it, but I don't know, what do you think? 10, 15 minutes, do you have time for 10, 15 minutes a day, maybe? And they did. They spent more than that on it, and they were just enthusiastic about it. Now, flash forward to my last school in DP, just before I came to Jakarta, I had classes of 20 students, 3 classes of 20 students. And there was no way. They were not only, there was more variety in terms of attitude, and there were lower levels as well. And they couldn't manage to do extra reading on top of everything else.
Yeah, I find it quite frustrating. I have a student who I've been teaching her since grade 6, and she's currently halfway through her DP now. And she was doing extensive reading up until she started the DP program at her school, because I'm in a private English school. And she just had to stop. It was so intense and so crazy. And even though I know it would be really helpful for her if she was able to continue, she had so much to contend with just starting the program that there was just no room in her life for the reading. Whereas before she was just an avid reader, read so much, which I think is probably how she managed to get into the IB program in the first place. But it's just crazy intense. And also the English language classes that they have at the school, I don't think they necessarily support the language learners in the best possible way. And it seems like a shame that they can't actually integrate extensive reading for the language learners as part of the IB program. I think that would work incredibly well if in a perfect world that could happen.
Yeah, with the ELLs and DP, my primary concern is mental health. I almost want them to stop reading and just take a break on the weekend.
Yeah.
It's just full on. It's just so much.
Has anybody else got any questions or comments? Or David or anyone else here?
Very, very interesting. I hope you will consider attending the World Congress in September and give, you know, a similar presentation. I think people would be interested to hear.
Thank you. Where is it going to be?
Hokkaido.
Oh, Hokkaido. Yeah. Let's see if I can get some funding.
Okay, well, if there's no other question, oh no, Paul, yeah.
Yeah, one more. We are totally redoing the X Reading homepage, making it a little bit more modern. If anybody's seen the homepage, it's atrocious, to put it mildly, and that is my fault since I designed it. But there was going to be a testimonial section, and if I recorded this correctly, I think you said X Reading saved our life. Would you mind if I use that one? And then there was the God, X Reading is cool. So yeah, if you don't mind, we're just gonna put those there and attribute them to you. Would that be fine?
Can you use my pseudonym, which is Chris Fry?
Sure. No, seriously, I'm glad it's been very helpful for you. And so you hadn't actually used it before, you only heard of it, or?
I'd heard of it in Singapore, and I heard of it in Singapore. I passed it on to one of the middle school EAL teachers, and I remember she said, no, that wouldn't suit our needs. And it just reaffirmed that idea that EAL teachers in international schools are not trained the same way as many of us are in Japan. Like, if she had looked at it, it would have absolutely suited our needs. But we didn't have as much of a need for it because we had a huge library of physical books. But it would have been certainly would have been more convenient for the students, especially when they went back during Chinese New Year and the summer holiday, and they could continue their reading.
Just, you mean you heard about it while you were in Singapore, or somebody in Singapore told you about it? Because I don't think we have any schools.
No, I heard it from one of these. I heard about it from one of these, I think, ER presentations or at an online JALT conference. I passed the information on.
Okay.
And yeah.
May I ask you one thing? It's nothing to do with the extensive reading, but when you go to several countries, does your children come with you and stay?
Yeah. I can't. My wife won't let me leave our son behind, even though he's 14 now, and I seriously consider that if she would allow it. Yeah, so my son's here. He's 14. He's in grade 8. He's bilingual and bicultural, and yeah, he's with us going through the program.
Oh, wow. He's lucky. I mean,
Please tell him that because he doesn't listen to me when I tell him.
Hey, David. Sorry, Paul. David, is it
Paul.
true that the staff, the children, the staff members that have children get free? They get the fees for free.
That's part of the package. Yeah.
Yeah.
Part of the
Okay. You're a lucky guy.
Yes. I'm grateful every day because, and I tell my son that there's no way you would be able to. There's no way we'd be able to afford to send you to a school like this. You'd be back in the United States going through metal detectors every day.
Ain't cheap, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Not related to ER, but your experience. So you went between Japan and Singapore a couple of times.
Yeah.
And then to Indonesia, and having just been to Indonesia recently, and noting that Japan and Singapore are far more similar, despite Indonesia being near Singapore. I find Japan and Singapore much more similar, and Jakarta, wow, yeah, very different.
We didn't make the choice to move to Jakarta. We moved to Jakarta Intercultural School, which happens to be in Jakarta. So we moved here for the school, and
why was that? I'm just curious.
It's an outstanding school. It's one of the few international schools in Asia that offer Japanese.
Okay.
And so my kid gets to continue his Japanese when he gets into high school. And yeah.
Wait, Sandra, we continue talking. You stop the recording, or you? What is the procedure?
Well, I was just waiting for a moment to pause, but perhaps this is that moment, where we thank David, but we're not going anywhere. We're just going to stop the recording. Jackie, if you'd like to do that, thank you.